The crystalline chamber hummed with an otherworldly resonance as Commander Marcus Chen stood before the Grand Council of the Galactic Concordat. The 7-month campaign had finally ended. Earth's forces, against all odds, had turned the tide against the Zathran swarm that had threatened to consume the outer colonies. Marcus had been the architect of that victory, the human who had somehow decoded the swarm's supposedly unbreakable neural patterns and developed the countermeasure that saved billions of lives across dozens of worlds. Now came the reward ceremony. The council chamber was a marvel of alien engineering, walls that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, floors that reflected not light but emotion, and air that tasted of colors Marcus had no names for. Representatives from 47 species lined the observation galleries, their varied forms ranging from the gaseous ephemerites to the crystalline thought singers of Harmonia VII. At the center of the chamber stood 2 figures, and Marcus felt his stomach tighten as he finally understood what was about to happen. Commander Chen, the voice of High Arbiter Velshara echoed through his neural translator, the Etherian's 6 eyes focusing on him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. Your deeds have earned you a place in the Concordat's Hall of Legends, but more than honor, you have earned choice. The 2 alien women stood on raised platforms of soft light, each beautiful in ways that transcended simple physical attraction. On the left was Lyra, a sylphid from the autumn worlds. Her skin seemed to shift through sunset colors, her 4 arms moved with liquid grace, and her voice when she had spoken to him earlier had been like music made tangible. She was a diplomat, brilliant and cultured, who had personally thanked him for saving her home system. On the right stood Krahana, a warrior scholar from the Draconic Imperium. Her scaled skin gleamed like polished obsidian, her eyes burned with inner fire, and the crest along her spine told the story of her victories in bioluminescent script. She had fought alongside him in the final battle, had pulled him from burning wreckage, had become something he might have called a friend if friendship could form in just 7 months of hell. By ancient tradition, Velshara continued, her crystalline form shimmering with ceremonial significance, a savior of the Concordat may claim a bondmate from among those who have offered themselves willingly. These 2 honored individuals have both expressed their desire to join with you, to form the sacred union that will bind our peoples closer. You need only choose. Marcus looked at them, really looked. Lyra's expression was hopeful but composed, the perfect diplomat even in this moment. She would bring connections, influence, a bridge to a dozen worlds. Their union would be celebrated, analyzed, documented. She was offering him a place in galactic high society, a life among the stars' elite. Krahana's face was harder to read, her draconic features less mobile than human ones, but he caught something in the set of her shoulders, pride, yes, but also a tension that spoke of vulnerability carefully hidden. She was offering herself, something she had likely never done before, and the courage that took was perhaps greater than anything she had shown in battle. Both of them were extraordinary, both deserved better than this. The chamber waited, thousands of eyes from dozens of species watched. The moment stretched, becoming uncomfortable. Marcus took a breath and stepped forward, but instead of approaching either platform, he turned to face the High Arbiter. "I'm honored," he said, his voice steady despite the racing of his heart. "Truly, but I can't accept this reward." A ripple of confusion spread through the chamber. Velshara's crystalline form flickered with colors that his translator interpreted as surprise and concern. "You refuse, Commander, perhaps you do not understand." "I understand perfectly," Marcus interrupted, knowing it was a breach of protocol but not caring. "And that's why I can't do this. On Earth we have a saying, a person is not a prize. These women," he gestured to both platforms, "they're not rewards to be claimed. They're individuals with their own dreams, their own agency, their own futures." He turned to look at Lyra and Krahana directly. "You both honored me by offering this bond, and I won't dishonor that by treating it like winning a trophy. Lyra, You're brilliant and compassionate, and you should choose your partner based on who you want, not on who saved your planet. Krahana, you're the finest warrior I've ever fought beside, and you deserve someone who sees you first, not someone who sees what you represent. The chamber had gone completely silent. Marcus could feel the weight of cultural incomprehension pressing down on him. He was violating something sacred, he knew, but some lines couldn't be uncrossed, even for diplomacy. Where I come from, he continued, speaking to the entire assembly now, we learned a long time ago that people aren't property. We learned it the hard way, through centuries of doing it wrong, of treating human beings like things to be owned, traded, or awarded. We paid for those lessons in blood and suffering, and maybe that's why I can't just forget them now. A new voice cut through the silence, sharp, heated, unmistakably angry. You insult us. The speaker was Lord Krishna, Krahana's father, his massive draconic form rising from the gallery. My daughter offers you a bond of honor, and you throw it back in her face like. Father, no. Krahana's voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. She stepped down from her platform, her movements deliberate. When she reached Marcus, she did something that caused gasps throughout the chamber. She lowered her head in a gesture of respect. He does not insult, he sees clearly. She raised her head, and Marcus saw something new in her burning eyes, not hurt, but a kind of fierce approval. I offered myself because I was told it was expected. Because you told me, she glanced at her father, that it would bring honor to our house. Because the Concordat's traditions demanded it. But the human asks a question I should have asked myself. Is this what I truly want, or is this what I was taught to want? Lyra descended from her platform as well, her 4 arms folding in a gesture of contemplation. The commander raises a point that troubles me, she said, her musical voice thoughtful. I believed I was making a choice, but was I? Or was I following a script written by centuries of tradition? She looked at Marcus with her large, luminous eyes. You humans are young in the Concordat, but perhaps that grants you perspective we have lost. Velshara's form had gone through several color changes during this exchange, settling finally on a deep blue that Marcus's translator suggested meant deep consideration. This is unprecedented. Commander Chen, you understand that by refusing, you may be creating a diplomatic incident. I understand, Marcus replied. But I also understand that sometimes doing the right thing isn't the same as doing the easy thing. If humanity is going to be part of the Concordat, we need to be honest about who we are. And one thing we've learned, painfully, repeatedly, is that relationships built on obligation or tradition instead of genuine choice tend to collapse eventually. I'd rather risk offending you now than build something false. The High Arbiter was silent for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she began to shift through a pattern of colors that his translator identified as amusement. You know what troubles me most about humans, Velshara said, and now there was something almost warm in her voice. You have this absolutely infuriating habit of being right about things we've done for millennia without question. Do you know how many bondmates throughout Concordat history have been truly happy? How many were simply dutiful? She turned to address the assembly. Perhaps the human shows us something we have forgotten in our centuries of civilization. The sacred bond was meant to be a choice of the heart, not a diplomatic transaction. When did we lose sight of that? Lord Krishna still looked furious, but his daughter approached him, placing a clawed hand on his massive forearm. Father, be honest. When you bonded with Mother, was it because tradition demanded it, or because you could not imagine a life without her? The great dragon's anger seemed to deflate. His voice, when he spoke, was quieter. We met during the siege of Carillon. She was a medic, I was wounded. She refused to let me die, though I ordered her to save herself. When I recovered, I knew. He trailed off, then looked at Marcus with new eyes. I knew I had chosen her in my heart before any ceremony made it official. That, Marcus said gently, is what I want for both of them, for everyone actually. That kind of certainty. Velshara's form brightened. Then let us alter tradition. Commander Chen, you have refused the reward as offered, but what would you ask for instead? You have earned something from the Concordat, and we do not leave debts unpaid. Marcus thought for a moment. Knowledge, he finally said. Access to the Concordat's cultural archives. I want to understand all of you better, not just your technology or your tactics, but your stories, your philosophies, your arts. Because if humanity is going to live among the stars, we need to understand our neighbors as people, not just as allies or adversaries. An unusual request, Velshara mused, but fitting, granted. As the ceremony dissolved into something less formal, delegates approaching to speak with Marcus, debate his decision, or simply express curiosity about human philosophy, Krahana remained beside him. You know, she said quietly, I'm not certain if I should thank you or challenge you to ritual combat for implying I cannot make my own choices. Marcus winced. I didn't mean. Peace, human. The draconic equivalent of a smile played across her features. You were right. I was following what was expected, not what I wanted. But now I am curious what I might want if I allowed myself to discover it. That, Marcus said, sounds like the beginning of something good. Lyra joined them, her sunset-colored skin flickering with what might have been humor. The diplomatic corps will be analyzing this incident for years. You have just rewritten several chapters of protocol. Sorry about that, Marcus offered. Do not be, some protocols deserve rewriting. She tilted her head thoughtfully. Though I confess, I am now wondering what courtship looks like when it is actually voluntary, a choice rather than a conclusion. Terrifying, Marcus admitted. Wonderful, awkward, sometimes all three at once. Humans, Krahana said, but there was warmth in her voice now, are deeply strange. We really are, Marcus agreed, but we try to be the right kind of strange. As the three of them stood together, no longer divided by platforms and traditions, something new began. Not a bond forged by ceremony or obligation, but the possibility of connections built on choice, respect, and genuine understanding. And in the galleries above, more than a few members of the Concordat found themselves questioning traditions they had never thought to examine. The human had not just refused a reward, he had offered something more valuable, a reminder that sapient beings deserved agency, even when tradition suggested otherwise. It was, many would later reflect, the most human thing he could have done, and perhaps that was exactly what the Concordat needed. Later that evening, in a less formal setting, Lord Kreshna approached Marcus. The massive dragon's expression was difficult to read, but his posture suggested respect rather than anger. Human, he rumbled, I judged you hastily. You protected my daughter's honor more than any bond could have. For that, you have my gratitude. I just tried to do what was right, Marcus said. Yes, Kreshna agreed. And in doing so, you reminded us all what right should mean. The Concordat speaks often of civilization and enlightenment, but perhaps we had become so civilized we forgot about choice. So enlightened we couldn't see our own shadows. He extended a massive claw, and Marcus shook it carefully, feeling the power in that grip but also the restraint. Tell me, Commander, Kreshna continued, in your species' history, when did you learn this lesson about agency and choice? Marcus thought about the question seriously. We're still learning it, to be honest. Every generation has to learn it again in new contexts, but the lesson started for us in pain, in recognizing the humanity in those we had denied it to, in understanding that power doesn't grant the right to choose for others. A hard lesson, the dragon mused. The important ones usually are. As Marcus left the council chambers that night, he passed by a window that looked out over the Concordat's capital world. Millions of lights twinkled in the darkness. Homes, lives, dreams from dozens of species all living together. It was beautiful and complex and sometimes messy, just like any civilization. But it was better, he thought, when everyone in it had the freedom to choose their own path. Even if that meant refusing what others called a reward. Especially then. Because in the end, the thing that made humanity special wasn't some unique trait or superior technology. It was the willingness to ask difficult questions, to challenge comfortable traditions, and to insist, even at personal cost, that sapient beings deserve to be treated as ends in themselves, never merely as means. It was the most human thing imaginable, to look at a gilded cage and choose freedom instead. And sometimes, just sometimes, that choice could change galaxies. The end.